I'm here to talk about e-text and the shift to digital. Hopefully your institutions are thinking about these things. You're seeing what's happening in the marketplace around textbooks and now e-text. And so I really wanted to start off with just asking a question, and we don't have the little clicker tool, so we'll just have to do raised hands. But right now, what is your institution's current level of engagement regarding the delivery of an e-text solution to students and faculty on your campuses? And so A, none. But we're thinking about it. Anyone in that group? Okay, good. Semi-engaged, so you're doing some pilots? Okay, excellent. Fully engaged, like you figured out, well, you wouldn't be here, right? You'd be somewhere in another session if you'd figured it all out. And then anyone, none, and we do not have any plans? Yeah? Okay, great, all right. So what we're here to talk about, this is a well-documented problem. I don't need to rehash a lot of the issues around textbooks and the cost to students. Let's just say that students are spending an extraordinary amount of money on their textbooks every year. At Indiana University, that number is between $600 to $1,200 a semester, depending on their subject matter. Obviously, the heavy science and math courses are a little more expensive. And it's been well documented. I think what's most interesting, though, is this one I've highlighted at the bottom, and that is the 7 in 10 students that have decided just to not buy a book at all and go to class without the reference material because of the cost. So I present to a lot of organizations, students, student associations and such, and I always ask this question of, well, how many of you have actually ever done that, right? So we all know how surveys work and statistics and all that, but how many of you in this room have actually ever decided not to buy a book because of the cost? And that number, 70%, always rings true. So as institutions of higher education, we have a real problem here when our students are deciding to go to class without the materials they need to succeed in the classroom. So I think that's one of the main issues, even beyond the cost of textbooks, of what's going on right now in the market. So what is the market? Well, this is kind of a simple illustration of the textbook market as a whole. And so for any of you that know this, I'm sorry to rehash it, but really the whole idea around the textbook market is you need to understand one thing, and that is that the publishers and the authors only get paid when they sell a brand new book. As soon as that book goes into the used textbook market, rental market, the author and the publisher do not receive another dime until they create a brand new edition and they push it out all over again. So what we have is this kind of this vicious circle where the publisher and the author, they set this high price for a new book, $250 for a biology book, for example. It comes down, students look at that and say, oh, forget that, I'll look at some substitutions. So they go out and they buy a used book. Maybe they'll stick with an old edition, right? So the 15th edition is being required, but Joe has the 14th edition. He'll sell it to me for 50 bucks. I'll just get by with it. No book, right? I'll just choose not to buy it all. And then piracy, of course, is a main issue for the publishers right now. Students would just say, well, we'll find it somewhere else. What this creates, though, however, is that the authors and publishers now are selling less books, which encourages them to raise the price even higher because, again, they're only going to get paid that one time, so they've got to make enough money off that sale to support them until they can create another edition. So you see this vicious cycle that we're dealing with right now. But a much-needed disruption, right? Technology saves the day, right? So digital distribution, there's software that's now available, new devices that students can access their content on. Everything's going to be okay, right? Because technology will save the day. All right, here we go. Wrong, right? Wrong. So what the digital marketplace is now showing us, these are books that I went and looked up on our campus, and these are actual books that students are using. And just started grabbing some information on all of these books based on pricing that's available out there. And so you'll see some of these prices, 70, 75% of list price. Any of you that's ever used an e-text that's available, those often come with some restrictions, right? So after 180 days, they go poof. Students can't access them anymore. Or they're limited in the number of devices that they can look at them on. So you can look at it on a laptop, but if mom and dad bought you an iPad for Christmas, I'm sorry, but you've already used your one device, so you can't really use it on the iPad. And this last point, this print 57 pages in 30 days, I'm not making that up, okay? I actually went to a bookstore, we'll leave it unnamed for the moment, and I was looking at the various textbooks and offerings for e-text, and on one textbook for the e-text offering, it said, well, you can print 57 pages every 30 days. So, Sally, if you needed that 58th page, I'm sorry. You're going to have to wait till next month before you print that out. So just ridiculousness going on right now in the marketplace and what this market is now creating. So what we have is another vicious cycle starting. all right? And that is, again, we're seeing these high prices for textbooks or for e-texts. The publishers are also creating all these new things called supplements, right? Ever heard of McGraw-Hill Connect or Pearson MyLab, Cengage Brain, I think is the name of Cengage? These are great things, but what they're doing is they're bundling it with the textbook. So if you go as a student to buy the textbook, it'll come with a code. Well, that code is only good for one user. So as soon as you're done with that textbook and you go to try to sell it back, well, now your textbook's only worth just as a textbook. So the next person that buys it has to go get the code somewhere. Well, guess where they have to go? They have to go to the publisher. And they have to pay whatever price that publisher is going to charge for access to the McGraw-Hill Connect or the Pearson MyLab that, again, the faculty is requiring them to use. So if they don't get a code, well, then they don't get to do homework in that class, for example. So they're really left without substitutes. And so as you can see, now can they choose a substitute? Well, there's no used e-text market, right? So they can't go there. So now they're back to no book or piracy, right? We don't know whether or not the authors or publishers are going to sell more or less under this model. So what we've left here now, again, with the restrictions, we're left with another vicious cycle that's starting. And what we need to do in higher education is see that this is happening and make a... Shut off my cell phone? I don't have my cell phone. It's... Sorry. No, it's okay. No. So what we have is this kind of vicious cycle that's starting. So I've got another question for you. So as from the perspective of higher education, what do you feel is the pathway that offers the most promise around the shift to digital textbooks? So the first one would be open educational resources. Anyone feel that that is the pathway that's going to lead us into the promised land? Free, available text for faculty to use, okay? Institutional models, this is something I'll dig into a little deeper. This is kind of what's going on at IU, but that's basically where the institution goes out and they negotiate with the publishers and the software providers on behalf of the students for deals. Anyone feel that may be the pathway? Okay, one. What about Apple and the other commercial suppliers just changing the market, right? Apple changed the music industry. Are they going to also change the publishing industry? Okay, and then anyone believes there's not going to be a shift to digital? All right, very good. So, all right, so interesting.
Nick, I think that identifies that most of us are still going, what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah, that's good, because I only saw like 5 hands raised. Well, I'll give you some insight at least of what we're doing at IU, and I'm not going to pretend that that makes sense for every single institution out there, but it is a model to think about and a business model approach to what the problem is around the textbook industry. So before we go any further, what are e-texts? Well, the term e-text has gotten very popular, short for electronic textbooks. It's catchy. It's easier to say than digital learning experiences. But what we're really talking about here is everything digital. So yes, we are talking about digital versions of textbooks, but we're also talking about the supplemental material. We're also talking about simulations and lab exercises, different types of tools that faculty want to use to teach. Shel Wagner discussed earlier in his talk today about the Khan Academy and videos and multimedia. That's all, when I refer to the term e-text, that's really what I'm referring to. I'm not trying to limit it just to an electronic version of a textbook. The self-produced digital content, I'll get into that a little bit later, but that's when faculty right now at all of our institutions are writing their own textbooks and they're using their own content. Well, with this shift to digital, what prevents them from just pushing that into an e-reader and providing it to students? All right, maybe it's free, maybe it's a cost, but it's certainly going to be cheaper than what students are now seeing out there in the industry. So this is an example. I popped this up here just to kind of give you an overview of what an e-text may look like. Some of you may have seen an e-text in the past, but this is the course load e-reader, which we use here at IU. And so as you can see, it's the way it's set up. It's pretty simple. It's kind of slick, highlighting, annotation. Important thing is with the course load, at least, what we felt was valuable is it's HTML5, so it works with any device with a browser. So we weren't going to try to make decisions on which devices a student should use to access e-text. We said, look, we just want it to be device agnostic. We want it to work with everything. Offline access. So many of you are probably wondering, well, what happens when the network goes down? Well, first of all, at Indiana University, the network never goes down, so we don't have to really worry about that. But if it did, what we would do is the e-reader allows you to actually download copies to your devices so that in the case that there is a network interruption, the students can still access their e-text while they're offline. This is kind of an expanded view of the various things you can do. We actually just got our data back from the fall 2011 pilot. The number one thing that students liked about e-texts was the search function. They liked the ability to go in there and say, okay, I want to go in the book where it talks about retinas. And they can simply type in retina. It will populate everywhere in the book that the term retina is used. They can go directly to the content that they wanted to see. Faculty actually prefer the ability to integrate additional materials into the textbook. So what this software allows you to do is, let's say you're talking about a certain subject matter. You as a faculty member could highlight it, all right, put an annotation in there that says, students, after you read this paragraph, click this link and go watch this video. And it'll illustrate exactly what we've been talking about in class. Or maybe it's an article, or maybe it's something that you can add as a faculty member to kind of improve your, the additional teaching materials that you can provide. Stuff that you normally would have to just go make printouts of, or bring a VHS into class, or show a video in class. It's immediately available on everyone's textbook, so all the students have it right away. So we're kind of at a crossroads right now, all right, as institutions of higher education. We need to make some choices, okay? We can kind of sit back and allow just the business to consumer model, just let it do whatever it needs to do, all right? Students, if you want to use an e-text, faculty, if you want to use an e-text, go get it, right? You can go to Amazon and get one, you can go to Barnes & Noble and get one, just whatever, go figure it out. Maybe Apple will figure it out, and there'll be an iTunes U that you can go download all your books for $15. We'll see how that all works out. That's one option that we could all choose as institutions of higher education. The other one is maybe we put all our eggs in the OER development basket. There's a big question around whether or not the funding will continue at the level it's been coming in at for these open educational resources. Again, publishers are spending a lot of money on these digital supplemental materials that they're selling to the faculty. It's, these integrated tools that have all sorts of different videos and illustrations and testing tools that the OER is going to have a lot of funding if it's going to keep up. The other issue that I see with OER is that when I talk to faculty about it, and I talk to them about, well, why don't you use some open educational resources, a lot of times their response is, well, because I want the good stuff, right? I don't want to use the free stuff. I want to use the good stuff, right? Whether or not that's true or not, I'm just telling you that's the perspective from faculty that I speak to. The other option is this institutional, what we call a toll booth model, and that is we, as institutions of higher education, are the toll booth. And we can go out on behalf of our students and sign deals with the publishers and with the e-reader providers, and as long as they're good enough, we can kind of open up what we call the toll booth and charge our students accordingly. And I'm going to walk through that a little bit for you. The IU e-text fee model is the toll booth model. And there's two basic concepts to it. And one is that we have a set of contracts with the publishers. All right, so IU has went out and signed deals with McGraw-Hill and Wiley. We're really close with Pearson, hopefully very, very soon with Pearson, Macmillan, Flat World Knowledge, some of the publishers. And what we've said is this, okay, if we can guarantee you that every student in a section pays for your content, we'll do that. But you have to drop the price substantially to where it makes sense for us to basically tax our students. Okay? Now, I use an R1 institution. Academic freedom is certainly at its peak. So this isn't a situation where we've went out and said, faculty, all of you, thou must use e-text from now on. All right, it's an option. So we've set it up to where faculty, if they want to continue doing whatever it is they do with whatever type of content they want to use, they can do that. But they can also use this model if they want to provide e-text to their students without the restrictions that are commonly available and on one piece of software. This is a digital and print discussion, all right? So there is always going to be a study out there. There's always going to be someone who's going to raise their hand and say, but I read somewhere where students don't learn when they read digitally. It's better in print, blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to argue whether or not that's true or not. What I'm saying is all of our deals allow the students to print out the content if they want to. That allows them to get a print-on-demand version of the content if they want to for a low price. This is not a discussion about changing everyone and making them start to consume things digitally. Okay? Access while they're enrolled at the institution. So this is really important. So I just made a comment about how the current marketplace is 180 days and it goes poof. Did you have a question?
I did.
Yeah.
Were you able to negotiate with
Yes. So if you just wanted to grab a chapter, yeah, so that's something that if faculty, so her question was, can we provide just groups of chapters to the faculty to kind of create course packs? Right. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. McGraw-Hill has a software called Create, in which you can grab certain chapters of a book and put them together at a certain price. And so, yeah, that's available through our models. We don't have Pearson signed yet.
But you're going to do chapters?
Well, yes, we plan to.
So I think I'm Shellwagoner, and I'm working with Nick on the pilot from UC Berkeley. And one of the things we found is the publishing industry's ability to understand that faculty would like chapters 1, 3, 6, and 10 of their book, and chapters 2 and 4 from somebody else's book, and then not any of the other chapters, but something off of YouTube for the third piece, is simply not within their cognitive capability at this moment. Much less their legal or contractual frameworks. It's inevitable that it's going to get there. And each of us trying to push individually isn't working very well, particularly with the existing middleman Cafe Scribe with Follett or proprietary platforms. They're really incentivized to sell you the whole package and assume that that's all the content you want to use. So I would just encourage everybody to be thinking about in your own institutions, whoever has responsibilities for these agreements. I would say first, do no harm in signing any agreement that's going to lock you into exclusivity, recognizing that we want to move them to this space where we can support the faculty in picking as small a granular content as they want. I mean, they've been doing this for generations with readers. We need them to do it now electronically.
But there's no difference between what you're describing and the music industry. I mean, I don't go buy whole CDs anymore. I buy the tracks I like. Why can't they learn from industries other than them?
Well, because the music industry didn't learn. Steve Jobs put his foot on their throat and said, "Do it or else."
But it wasn't Steve Jobs, though, because we've got Amazon and all the rest of them that are doing the same thing.
But that's because the model was broken. Once the model was broken and they understood that there was revenue there, then they were willing to do it. But they had to break their original model. And the publishing industry hasn't broken their model yet. They're still trying to maintain their legacy model. And I think once it starts to go, like you said, it's clear that the other industries have made money. I mean, it's there now. But that doesn't mean the people in the publishing industry themselves.
When you say they haven't broken the model, I know there's and we're just looking at this, but Academic Hub, and some of these others, I mean, they already do that, right? You can go to them and you can just say, I want chapters 2 and 5, and they will work out all of the licensing deals with the publisher, and they'll create one big ebook for your course with different pieces from 6 different places.
In most cases, they're negotiating from the list price down for those activities, and you're paying a premium for them. Really, I think the key issue here is being able to integrate open content, e-content of whatever variety, and published traditional content components in a remixed way. And most of the publishers' licenses are happy to let you do that as long as you pay, basically rack rates. And if we want to lower the cost of education to our students, we're going to have to do something different. The model can't keep going the way it is. I mean, it costs more for students to buy textbooks than it does for them to pay their fees at community colleges.
Sorry, we're already taking away from the question.
Oh, that's okay. I got to go back.
How come nobody started that? How come no entrepreneur has got some college profs to write books in an e-format that can be parceled out? We've been in this, 5-6 years pretty heavily. How come nobody started up? Not word to extent, but not to, is it just because we're so ingrained with McGraw-Hills and the Pearsons and we just don't trust anybody else? Even the OERs, we despise them because they're free? Is it just we only want it if it's expensive and from those we know?
I think one of the interesting things, I'm going to talk about that later, about the shift to digital, is that now we do have that option and it's a little easier for us to do so. We don't feel like we have to go to a big publisher to get all these things, whereas now, because it's digital, and I can actually speak from experience, for this semester at IU, there's a faculty member that's going to sell his book as an e-text, and we put it under this model. And so before, what he had been doing was he went with this company called ClassPack, and they charged him a fee, and then he had to sell it at the bookstore, and they took a cut. And so students ended up paying, $30 for this piece of material. Under this eText model, we're going to get it to him for $14.95. And that's still, as an author, he's still getting his same cut. So I think those options are available, and I think that's what's so exciting about this shift is that we now have the ability, for example, on that course load reader, faculty can put whatever they want through it. So if they have, stuff that they've wrote, PowerPoints, whatever they want to do, that can all be pushed into that e-reader and can be read right alongside that McGraw-Hill textbook. So, these options are coming available, but yeah, I agree. I think it's starting to get a little more momentum, again, as the price issues have become more mainstream. Sure?
Yeah, just one more thing to mention is with the whole, the iBook platform from iTunes U that's just recently, I don't know how you guys are wrapping that in, but if you are or if you aren't. Unfortunately, it's not device agnostic. That's the
Yeah, and that would fail one of our first tests.
For large users.
Right. Right, and so, yeah, we have not adopted that as part of our eText initiative. Again, if faculty want to use that, then that's fine.
Maybe that'll break the model.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. I think I left off with the access issue. So, again, all of our deals at IU, the students can continue accessing their content as long as they're enrolled. So, they can get their 4-year undergraduate degree, decide to go get an MBA, and they're going to continue to have access to all of that reference material as long as they're here. So we heard a lot of complaints from faculty who talked about, boy, I wish my students wouldn't go sell their textbooks back all the time because there's a lot of good reference material from the Biology 101 course that they could have used in Biology 102. But because they have to get some money back, they sell all their stuff. And so one thing we put in there was that the continued access. The second point here, and I think it's almost as important as the first point, and that is select one platform provider at your institution. Okay? Each publisher has their own preferred e-reader device, right? So depending on which publisher you pick, they're going to say, well, can you read it in this e-reader? And then, so Pearson has theirs, and McGraw has theirs, and Wiley has theirs. Well, what you can see happening is that a student walks on campus, and they're in 3 eText classes with 3 different publishers. They have 3 different ways to read their textbook, all right? And all of that software does essentially the same thing, maybe right-clicking to highlight in this one and left-click highlights this one, but it's just a mess. And for an IT department, it's a support nightmare. So what we did is we went out and said, okay, look, we're going to pick one e-reader software provider, and that is how all of our students and faculty under our initiative are going to access eText at our institution. Okay? Again, we had to make it a device agnostic, like I already talked about. It integrates with our learning management software, which we use Sakai at IU. But what that eliminates is there's no codes, right? So when students sign up for an eText, the way they access it is they go through our LMS. They use their IU username and password that they use for everything else. That gets them into the LMS. And then if they're in an eText course, there's a link. They simply click it, and there's their textbook. And we're also integrating, so for example, with McGraw-Hill, and I've talked about Connect and such, that's integrated with our LMS as well, so that students, if the faculty have chosen the digital supplement, they can also just go right out of the LMS into that. So no passcodes, no anything like that. I've already talked about the online and the device agnostic.
So which reader are you using?
Which we're using Course Load, the Course Load e-reader. The pictures I showed a few slides ago, that's Course Load. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, Course Load is its own separate company. Right. Okay. So just briefly, at IU for the spring 2012 semester, so these numbers, one of the policies we have at IU is that students, because we're setting up this fee process, students need to know before they enroll that they're going to be charged a fee for a class. And so we require that the faculty get those orders in before students register. By the time we had signed our agreements with the publishers and Course Load and everything, we literally had 4 weeks in which to communicate this all out to faculty, tell them what's available. So we had 130 course sections, 5,300 students. Thus far, I'll find some wood to knock on. I don't know if this is real wood, but there's been no problems. It's been eerily silent. You would expect that there was an issue somewhere, something crashed. But it's been a really, really good experience thus far. Course Load's been great at service. We've gotten our Centers for Innovative Teaching and Learning involved, so that they're there for a faculty resource if faculty want to learn more about how to use the software or different things you can do. There's data analytics within that software, so faculty can see how much students are reading or highlighting and such. So there's a lot of neat little tools that you can do. You know, the savings, you know, they're there. I mean, again, we think those savings can be even greater when compared to the current marketplace. If you want to know more about what IU's doing, here's our website, etext.iu.edu. Take a look. We have all our PowerPoints and slides and everything up there that you may need. Feel free to take what you want out of there and use it at your institution if it's helpful. So, what else have we been doing? Well, this past spring, you know, Shell hinted at it. Internet 2 and their Net Plus services and McGraw-Hill and CourseLoad created a pilot. And the best way to describe this is it's a pilot pack. So an institution can quickly have e-text on their campus, no contracts, you know, with back and forth with the publishers, no rehashing the things that IUs have been doing for the past 3 years on trying to figure this all out, but a real simple way to get e-text on your campus for a small pilot so you can start gathering data, getting feedback from students and faculty. UC Berkeley, Cornell, Minnesota, Virginia, and Wisconsin participated. There was a research study that's a part of this, so that at the end of the semester, each institution is going to have a research study that they can review and see how their students interacted, get feedback from their students and faculty. So a really great deal. Thus far, it's been very, very popular, which has led us to this. And you're invited. So for fall 2012, there is another one of these pilot packs available through Internet 2 and EDUCAUSE. So when I made this slide a few days ago, there actually were a lot of slots left. And I'm looking at Shell and he's shaking his head. I don't know if there's any slots left right now, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't write this email address at the bottom if you're interested. There could be people that signed up and they don't want to be involved yet. I think, you know, I'm talking to the vice president for the Net Plus services, and I think we're going to have a spring 2013 pilot. Pretty sure about that, so Shell's shaking his head. This was kind of the basics of the fall pilot. It was up to 50 institutions. Right now, the platform's CourseLoad, the publisher's McGraw-Hill. We're reaching out to try to get more publishers involved. As Shell has discussed a little bit, everyone's a little hesitant. They're kind of dipping their toes in the water right now. McGraw-Hill's jumping in head first, which is great. I think it's great. Those are the basics about the institutions and the fees. This money goes directly to the publisher and CourseLoad. So again, it's about just trying to get something on your campus to start the process and to start gathering feedback and data. Research studies available. So email that address at the bottom if you're interested in doing something for the fall or maybe even the spring. So that's kind of what we've been doing. Where are we going in the future, right? So what are the steps that we'll see maybe in the next 1 to 2 years? There's probably tons. I've focused on 4 here. The first one is just richer content. I mean, I think you're starting to see some of this now. There's some companies that are really pushing this out. They're changing the way people think about textbooks, right? I mean, completely interactive textbooks that have video that you can pull up and watch, or interactive graphs and models that change based on the inputs you put directly into the textbook. So this stuff is just going to get better and better as the software gets better, as the devices get better. So I think what we'll see is we'll continue to see this movement and really the change of a traditional textbook as we learn more and more about how students are learning at our institutions. Accessibility. This is a very, very big issue, and it's a very important issue. I think fortunately, though, what we see is that this shift is going to provide more opportunities for us to accommodate our students. Having this digital content, you know, I think it makes it even easier for our accessibility centers and our institutions to, you know, provide these accommodations for our students that need them. I think the key is that the publishers and the platform providers have to be proactive here. All right, they can't wait for, you know, to be pushed to do something. They have to go out and try to be proactive in how they approach this issue. And if there's new formats that come along that make accessibility even easier, they need to jump on those formats. All right. I would encourage all of you, as you start thinking about the e-text, encourage your partners to work. If you have accessibility centers on your campuses, get them involved immediately. I know from IU's perspective, we've got CourseLoad very, very involved with our Adaptive Technology Center so that, you know, they're constantly being evaluated as far as how effective their e-reader is. And whenever requests for accommodations come into our center, they're immediately working right with Course Load and the publishers to make sure that we're meeting some of those needs. Pricing. So this is kind of fun. You know, Shell touched on it a little bit, but right now we're operating under this idea of a discount off list price. Okay? So, you know, if we think about the used car industry or just the car industry in general, I'll give you whatever discount you want as long as I get to set the price, right? You can come in, I'll give you a 50% discount on that Ford truck because I know I'm going to set the invoice price myself. That's what we're seeing, right? So all of these discounts are based off a list price from the publishers. Well, the list price, it's a made-up number, all right? It's a made-up number that the publishers make up themselves. All right, there's no national list price that they compare with each other. They define one day that the biology book should be $229.95. And then next semester, maybe it's $239.95. And I'm sure there's a formula that they have. But what I'm saying is this is a number they make up. All right, so we need to kind of get away from this, you know, 40% of list or 50% discount. And what we've started talking about with some of the publishers is flat rate pricing. I can tell you Flat World Knowledge has been, you know, very keen on this about, look, it's one price for every textbook. That's what it is. We have a similar deal with Harvard Business Publishing for some of their cases and articles where it's, you know, no matter what the case is, it's this price, and that's it. Now, we probably aren't going to get to something so simple with the publishers as they have different books cost them a lot more to make. So that chemistry book costs them a lot of money, whereas the English composition book doesn't cost them a lot of money. So what we've talked about with them is providing these price buckets. So if you can imagine, you know, maybe 3 tiers of pricing to where there's a $15 price bucket, there's a $30 price bucket, and there's a $50 price bucket. And the publishers all have to figure out which books to put where. And the faculty will look at it and say, okay, well, I'm thinking about that book in the $30 price bucket. That's where it is. And maybe the publisher makes a lot of money on that price, or maybe they lose a little money on that price. But the faculty would be able to see, okay, well, that book's $30 here, but at Amazon, my students could get it for $45. Well, let's tell my students to get it at Amazon, they could sell it back and get some money out of it. So I think just moving away from this, again, this made-up price and these discounts is kind of the way we hope to be going in the future. And then just imagining the various opportunities that are available out there for institutions. So if you're involved in a model like this, and IU is not doing this currently, but at any time we certainly could, when you're charging these e-text fees to students, if you have revenue that you need to recover, let's say for infrastructure, let's say for development around this initiative, or for other things, instead of a $35 e-text fee to students, maybe it becomes a $37 e-text fee to students, and the institution takes $2 to pay for certain things. That's an option. It's even more of an option when you're talking about the school and the departmental level, who are maybe they want to put some money into creating their own content, right? So it gets very, very interesting when you start thinking about this. And again, you're still lowering the cost for students substantially, right? And so this can be a win-win for everyone involved. I've talked a little bit about the locally developed digital content. The libraries have a role here. So our libraries pay a lot of money for licenses every year so that our students and our faculty have access to different types of content. Well, if we're already paying for that content, why can't the faculty use it to teach with? And why can't they push it out digitally? Instead of making copies of it and handing it out to students, what prevents us from taking a PDF from an Elsevier journal and pushing it into the course load reader, and now every student has it in their e-reader device, and every student can highlight it and annotate it and do all these things. Again, we've already paid for it through an institutional site license. All of our students have the rights to use it. All of our faculty have the rights to use it. Now we're just going to try to take it one step further to say, now let's truly start using it in a digital fashion within each classroom. So with that, I think I'm good on time. I hope so. Questions, discussion? Yes?
I don't know if I heard, in terms of the time bombing, would you negotiate that away?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Time bombing that they deny access after
Oh, so the question was about length of access? Yeah. So yes, in all of our agreements at IU, we have arranged to where students have access as long as they're enrolled at IU. So they will continue to have access. If they drop out for 3 semesters, they would lose access. But if they continue to, let's say they start as a freshman and they buy an e-text then, they will have it as a senior.
How do you know that? How does that?
Because I negotiated the contracts.
No, not the
Oh.
I didn't mean that.
Okay.
How do they know if the student's enrolled or not? You have to share that information across the
Yeah, what we do is when a student drops out, and I'm sure these are similar at all of our institutions, when a student actually drops out of the institution, they're labeled as a not enrolled. And so whenever course load would see that, they would see that someone is not enrolled and should no longer have access to that content.
Okay, then there's no FERPA issues with that. That's allowed.
We ran this by University Council, and we have not seen any FERPA issues thus far. Because again, you're not really giving them data as far as that student personally. It's whether or not they're enrolled at the institution. Yes.
So, did you have a bookstore or a student organization that was benefiting revenue-wise off the sale of books, or do you currently? How did you negotiate that lost revenue?
So the question was, do we have a bookstore at Indiana University or a student association? Ours, yeah, we do have a bookstore. We have a contract with Barnes & Noble. Our contract with Barnes & Noble gives them, they are the exclusive physical location for textbooks on our campus. They are not the exclusive provider of e-texts. So within the realms of our contract, this falls, it's not, no violation whatsoever.
So it's basically not a student organization that's benefiting from.
No, we have a contract with Barnes & Noble who provides that service.
It's an awkward thing on some campuses because their student
So
association is the one already benefiting from those.
right, so again, back to a previous slide, what you would have the option as an institution is you could still create revenue off of this and still save students money, right? So I think there's kind of a win-win potential there for any.
How long have you had your Barnes & Noble contract? Have you negotiated the recently?
It was, I want to think it was 07, 08, 07.
The reason I'm asking is because the biggest struggle I'm having right now is that our Barnes & Noble contract, that through the contract, our school gets a lot of money from Barnes & Noble to allow them to be the exclusive. And so our CFO is actually saying the school's going to lose a lot of money, and we say the students a lot of money. So it's very interesting. Right now I'm struggling with them and Barnes & Noble, but it's a recent agreement with Barnes & Noble. So
I came up to the front.
Smarter.
Yeah, I came up to the front of the room because I would, the first thing I would encourage everybody here to do is to do no harm. Do not sign those agreements. Do not let your institution sign those agreements. They want that bookstore on your campus. Bookstores make a lot of margin off of everything other than books. They will continue to pay your campuses to have those bookstores there. But giving them the exclusivity clause on something that is technology-based, and then signing these deals for 5, 7. One of our colleagues, emailed me in tears, or the relative nature thereof, saying that he just found out that their institution signed a 15-year deal. Okay, I'm pretty sure if anybody signed a deal 5 years ago for exclusivity on a platform, the whole iPad thing, not included, right? I mean, why we would sign exclusivity on technology today is ludicrous. But the publishers and the embedded third-party channels, the bookstores, see that as a way to continue to maintain their existing business models. It has nothing to do with benefit to the universities, nothing to do with benefit to the students. So the fact that they're paying, in Berkeley's case, the bookstore has asked for an exclusivity to be added to our contract. And they have, it's full ed, they have Cafe Scribe, they've got an electronic reader, etc. They are trying to sell that to the students by saying if they don't agree to that, then how much they pay into the student groups is going to go down. You have to help them do the math, right? Yes, there may be a pain to the student groups, but is it better to add $1 to your e-text fee to recover that, or is it better to give an exclusivity? Right? So you really have to be working through these things. And even as technologists who may not own the bookstore, or you may not own this issue, you do know technology. And nobody in this room, I know this because you wouldn't be employed, would have signed a 7-year exclusive agreement, or a 10-year exclusive agreement, or even a 5 on technology. You just wouldn't do it. And right now this market is far too immature to commit to a single direction with any kind of platform for that short term. We're all dealing with it. And this colleague that said they signed their 15-year deal, it was signed by the Vice Chancellor of Administration student affairs, the people, they don't know anything about technology. They didn't even realize what they had given away. Right? So you've got to find a way to insert yourself into those conversations. Otherwise, you'll be looking back thinking, who did this?
And the other thing, Michelle, I think with the physical bookstore on campus is the real reason the Barnes & Noble want the bookstore on campus is they make the money on the used books. If they're physically on campus, where is the student most likely to sell the book? They may sell it to the guy in the truck on the corner, but they will most likely just go to the bookstore, and that's where Barnes & Noble makes a huge percentage of their profit. The new books are not that profitable for them. The used books are enormously profitable, 80% or so. That was the reason they wanted on the campus.
Just because you have your deal with Barnes & Noble, so they don't have to turn off your print clause in your other one. But once you print, you then have a solid copy.
So again, I can only speak to IU's contract. IU's contract is their exclusive physical location for selling textbooks. That's the language. So that's, we're not, this deal is not in any type of violation. And I will expand it just a little bit on publishers. This makes publishers actually more money. All right, so these models of these e-text fees, again, if you understand their textbook model, which is they get paid once every 3 years, when you can provide them with the ability to say, well, you're going to get paid for fall semester, spring semester, summer semester, fall semester, and just continue. As long as that discount is now to the students as well, publishers make more money, authors make more money, so you're going to have some of those faculty that are going to step and say, well, I make money on royalties. You can still make money on royalties. That's not an issue. But our students are going to save money as well. And that's one of the reasons we're here. Rosemary?
So one idea is because their cost for the digital distribution is basically nothing.
Right, it's his send, yeah.
Right, so reality is that potentially from Internet 2's perspective, we might be able to negotiate that the price goes down as the volume goes up. Because reality is, that's what we did with the Microsoft agreement long ago with software. Reality of it is that they are making a boatload on this because there's no paper, there's no printing, there's no
shipping,
staff, there's no nothing in there. So
I would tell you, so that the point she's making is, all right, so we know that we're disintermediating a bunch of costs. So where's that money going? In fact, we're not initially, because they still have their full supply chain, their full distribution. So the head of those business units at the publishers just see red ink when all of a sudden you say, well, this is, they translate it to, wait a minute, I'm selling my $179 textbook for, X percent, on the dollar. No, I can't do that because all my costs don't go away when I do this. This is why they're dead men walking, right? This is why, at some point they're going to wake up and all these independent publishers who won't try to charge all that will go to these individual faculty members and say, here, let me give you a digital deal. So they're trying to maintain their legacy while they're trying to figure out how to move forward. And at some point, you just can't do both. So this is where our collective engagement will help. And in fact, it's not all the publishers. A number of the publishers are very excited about this because they can't afford the cost to educate all of higher ed on what we're trying to do. They would embrace this as one way to get there. And Nick didn't tell you, but he's got a new Ferrari. He's making a fortune. And your total commissions have been?
That's a zero.
0 times, yeah. So we'll double what he's making next year. But Nick has personally put in a huge amount of time and the work on IU, and he's representing higher ed as a donation back from IU to Internet 2 to do all this. So quick round of applause for Nick.
Thank you.